our Nashville Next update. Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's good to see you all. My name is Jennifer Carlat, and I do special projects here at Metro Planning, and I'm here today to talk about Nashville Next and to give you an update on implementation. As you are aware, we're coming in on the very end of a 3-year process for Nashville Next. And as such, we thought that this would be an appropriate time to talk to you about the next steps after adoption, which is implementation. It's going to occur on several different levels, so we want to spend a few minutes on that today. And to just remind you that Nashville Next, the plan itself, will be coming to the Planning Commission for adoption in April 2015. So let's start with our implementation goals on kind of a meta level. Nashville Next will have a section on implementation, and it's got a few top level goals, such as the idea that this is not a plan that sits on a shelf, that we've had a lot of Nashvillians, over 15,000 at this point, who've participated, and we will be doing everything in our power to implement the Nashville Next plan that they've given so much time and energy and insight to. We will also be making a commitment to regularly informing Nashvillians about the progress, both on our outputs, what kind of actions we're taking, and our outcomes, which kind of success we're having. And we will be monitoring new developments, not only in the built environment, but also in some of the trends that are impacting our city, to see if we need to make amendments to Nashville Next, which is our next implementation goal. The idea that Nashville Next is regularly updated to remain relevant to future decisions. Nashville Next will be working, as we have throughout the process afterward during implementation, to work with public and private and nonprofit sectors to do coordination of our different action items. And as we hear back from these partners about things that they think need to change in Nashville Next for the document to remain relevant, we'll bring back changes to you for your approval. And then finally, looking at our wheelhouse at Metro Planning, we will be using the tools that we have within Metro, regulations and incentives, how we use the right-of-way, capital improvements and other programs, and how we organize city government, using all of those tools and harnessing them to implement the goals that come out of Nashville Next. You may recall that in addition to being a planning document for the city for the coming 25 years, Nashville Next acknowledges that economic and workforce development, arts and culture, children and youth, housing, health, and the built environment, natural resources, all of these topics are facing trends in the coming 25 years that will impact how our city grows, what we choose to preserve, and how we serve our residents in the future. So each of those resource teams has their own goals and policies and actions that will be a product of Nashville Next. Here are our boilerplate definitions. The goal is that broad community level desire for what they want to see in the future. The policy starts to hone in a bit on statements of intent to guide our decisions in the future. And then skipping down to the bottom, right now the resource teams are working on action items, concrete steps, short-term, mid-term, and long-term to implement the city's goals. Do remember, too, that the goals come out of the input of the resource teams, which are Nashvillians with topical expertise, but also those resource teams responding to Nashvillians' concerns about what matters to them right now and in the future for Nashville. So as an example, I brought you one from Economic and Workforce Development. They have an overall goal that acknowledges that we have a very diverse economic base, which is one of our keys to our success. And the policy is to maintain an adequate inventory of investment-ready places that can match the needs and uses of our businesses. So the action item, or one of many action items, is to identify what investments and tools would be necessary to make particular centers attractive to business relocation or expansion. Moving on to how Metro Planning itself will work on implementation, I wanted to remind the commissioners and the audience that Nashville Next, as the general plan for the county, it encompasses a land use plan, which we all know as our community character manual and our community plans, and it encompasses a transportation plan. Mobility 2030 will, during this process, be updated to Mobility 2040. Those nesting plans, the smaller ones underneath there, the community character manual, the community plans, and the mobility plan will all be updated and adopted with Nashville Next when we bring it to you in April. And remember that from all those plans, those are what guide our decisions on subdivision, zoning, and capital investment decisions. Which seemed like a good opportunity to remind everybody that right now we have our preferred future draft out for public input now through January 23rd. Folks can go online to NashvilleNext.net and participate in a survey that gets them to respond to the preferred future, where we're going to grow, what we're going to preserve, and what transportation investments we're going to make. And at that point, they can also give comment on proposed changes to the specific community plans as well. Recall that we will be updating the community plans to align them with the preferred future. And so all of those community plan updates will be coming to you with Nashville Next for your consideration in April. Again, folks can go and respond to these through January 23rd at NashvilleNext.net. Okay. And then I wanted to spend a moment on some of the key implementation recommendations. These won't be a surprise to you. They've been some of the top vote getters throughout Nashville Next, topics that the public is very interested in and that our resource teams have been hammering away on trying to find some solutions to address them. The first key implementation recommendation is the discussion of a high-capacity transit network. We have been working with the community to think about what kind of transit they want to see in the future, where they want to have that transit serving the community, and how they get around the community. So on the screen, what you see is the proposal for our high-capacity transit network lines. You see that there's some that are thicker, that are mostly our spokes, and then there is the addition of some crosstown connectors, which would be new for our city. The dashed lines refer to the fact that all of this is occurring within a regional context. And what we're talking about here is all total about 200 miles within this county of high-capacity transit. This is much larger than a 25-year plan, as you can imagine. That's not going to occur in 25 years, which is why we've also been talking to the community about how, where we are today, we have about 40 miles of high-capacity transit. That's the Music City Star and our 2 BRT light lines. If we go out to our 200 miles within the county, then we have some choices. If we want to do high capacity within traffic, that's the BRT light system, then those 200 miles would, on average, cost us about $1.4 billion. Meanwhile, if we want to go the other route of having some transit out of traffic in dedicated lanes, then we're looking at over $7 billion. So again, not a 25-year plan. This is much longer. But I think what we've been talking to the community about is none of this happens overnight. It's all of the decisions the community makes, the commission makes, and the council makes about where we locate density and where we locate investments to support transit. As you know, affordable housing has been a really hot topic in the community, and Nashville Next is addressing that as well. You may recall that one of the community conversations that we had over the summer was on housing and gentrification. It was attended by over 300 folks, and some of the research that was sponsored by Nashville Next by Ami Thurber, Dr. Frazier, and others from Vanderbilt was presented. Right now, at the bottom, I wanted to note that our housing resource team is continuing to work on their goals and policies and actions, but we are not waiting until the adoption of Nashville Next. Your commission has appointed a committee to discuss affordable housing and what kind of actions the commission could take. Meanwhile, the planning department is doing research into long-term sustainable funding sources for the Barnes Fund. And we are also leading into the preliminary research on what inclusionary policy would look like, the nexus study, the feasibility study, and the structure of such a policy. So those are underway right now. And I don't want to dismiss the other work that the Commission and Council do for affordable housing by providing just a variety of housing types and housing that is located in the right location for transit, and so on and so forth. Another key implementation recommendation is the idea that the city could strengthen the coordination of its investments. One way to think about this is when we think about the Gulch, before it was the Gulch we know today, and how the city made investments in terms of streetscape, in terms of underground infrastructure, and that led to private sector interest and redevelopment. Another example are the investments that have occurred out at Hickory Hollow with the new park and community center and the library, also some economic development incentives to bring different businesses and employment to the area. So the idea about coordinating our investment in centers where the location is tied to transit. The idea being that Nashville Next would propose that in the plan there would be centers that would be Tier 1. We would be asking these centers to bear the greatest amount of growth of residents and jobs. And in conjunction with that, we would be providing more amenities and more services and more investments to them. There'd be a Tier 2 and a Tier 3 as well. Some of the investments that we could coordinate are listed on this slide. And so this would be a different path than the city has taken in the past. We would really be looking to certain areas to provide a bit more investment and then asking that area to bear a bit more growth. Finally, the last key implementation recommendation that I wanted to hit on was the idea that we have heard from the community about their interest in preserving neighborhoods, yet we know we're also going to be welcoming a lot more Nashvillians over the coming 25 years. And so, pardon me, we've introduced the idea that along our prominent transit corridors and around our centers, we would have areas that would serve as a transition area, providing infill and different types of housing that would serve three purposes. This is the type of housing that would be interesting to boomers who are downsizing, millennials who are forming households. It would be close and in proximity to transit and services. And then also it could provide a more harmonious transition from the height on a prominent center or corridor to the neighborhood. So within that transition and infill, we're talking about what we've been coming to call missing middle housing. Our city does quite well in providing single-family detached housing, and lately we've had a real boom on mid-rise and high-rise, but there are many, many more types of housing in between those two that are very attractive to the boomers and the millennials that we aren't providing right now. So we're going to be introducing some action items in conjunction with missing middle housing. Finally, I'll end with our next steps to remind everybody that January 23rd is when we close this portion of our community input on the draft preferred future and updates to the community plans. We will release the entire draft of Nashville Next in February, and then in April we will be coming to the Planning Commission to present the Nashville Next plan for adoption. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for your time.